You're looking at my new office right there. That's Orange Julius.
Very cool.
Yep.
Are you going to have an Orange Julius machine there?
We really should, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
For a little nostalgia.
Yeah.
Now you can see this this gate that was just cut up into pieces by the fire department. They had a lot of fun. We had paintball games and war games in here for the FBI and for the local fire department.
Oh yeah, they're testing out saws or something on these gates.
Can you imagine what fun for those guys?
Yeah. Very cool. And all this will be ripped out?
Yes.
All the walls, everything.
You'll get a much better sense of how dramatic the change will be when we go into the next section that's already been converted. The plans for this side of the house aren't finished yet, partially because, again, we have all this room, but we're not going to build all the office space out on day one. I would say we're sort of conservative in these ways. We're going to build out as we know that we need and kind of go down the path. There's nothing worse than being under the thumb of a lot of cost you can't get away from. I mean, I think that's a side effect of our nature, but also from living through the bubble. People made bad business decisions, and it made them make, it just kind of built on itself. So they kept making even worse business decisions trying to get out of, it's like being at the blackjack table and keep doubling down, hoping it's going to work out in the end. And for most companies, it didn't work out for them.
Yep, no, that's true. Are you getting a good deal on the rent on this?
Oh, we are. The city leased us the building for a great deal. So, we're going to put over $100 million of investment into revitalizing the mall. But they made us a great deal. They're fantastic partners. Yeah.
Most of this is going to be machines eventually, or is it going to be?
This is all going to be people.
It's all people.
Yeah, Rackspace is not really a machines and data center company. We're really a people company. This building is going to be the data center. Let's walk through.
Yeah.
I mean, Microsoft, Lowe's, a lot of big companies are now saying, hey, San Antonio is a great place. So, don't go too far.
Stay more. Okay. There's about 1 million square feet worth of data center space being built in San Antonio right now. It turns out that of all places that San Antonio is a hot spot for data centers.
And you were explaining why, because you have good access to freeways, good access to fiber, good access to railway, and good access to power, right?
That's right. That's right.
A whole lot of flat ground, and also a lot of
no earthquakes.
Yeah, no earthquakes, and a good population to draw on, not only here but out of Austin and Houston. So, there's a lot of opportunity.
If you look at comparing it to our Dallas data center, the power cost is about half. So, in data center math, a penny of cost is equal to $1 million a year in power cost difference. And we're about a nickel cheaper than Dallas. So, and most of the country, it's about a third to a half of what power is in most of the country.
And that's because you have a nuclear plant nearby, or
it's nuclear and nuclear and coal. Yeah. So, whereas most places do not have nearly the stability of their power prices because of the fuel that they burn. So it's a perfect place for data centers. And in a managed hosting model, we have to pay the power cost, so our customers don't pay it. So we want to operate in places where our costs are going to be lower, where we're going to have long-term lower cost of operations, because our customers, we don't have a strategy of trying to be close physically to our customers. All of our customers use the servers remotely.
So how long will it take to build this space out, for instance?
About 2 years. It'll be 2 years before this goes online. Okay. So
if we come back in 2 years, what will there be computers all the way up to the ceiling? What will it feel like?
Here, why don't you, Bob? You want to talk?
2 years from now,
Wait, you got to turn the mic.
The wall's going to be right there. That'll actually be the edge of the data center right there.
Okay.
What you'll be standing over here is the electrical room and PDUs and like that in here.
What are PDUs?
Power distribution units will be over in this area. The data center will actually be through that hole through there, back through there.
What's the raised floor area, Bob?
We're thinking somewhere around 100,000 square feet of raised floor, 4 25,000 square foot bays.
So it'll be in the neighborhood of 75,000 servers.
Wow.
It's a lot of servers.
I bet AMD and Intel are taking you out to dinner a lot
Certainly
lately.
are. Well, we have 35,000 servers today, and of course, we're buying them nonstop. We're one of Dell and HP's largest customers, so I think they treat us very well.
What kind of hard drives do you use?
Of course, we use tons of Seagate drives,
This is why they pay me.
Of course, this is their shot to get an exclusive. Yeah. But this is Montgomery Wards. We're entering Montgomery Wards.
Yeah.
So the fascinating thing about converting a mall like this is that, it was built as shell to begin with, and then you sort of fill in some, retail space. So converting it back into whatever you want is actually a lot more straightforward than if we were trying to do this with, say, an office building or any other kind of structure. This thing is meant to be taken back to the walls and cleared out, and then you have all this room to do what you're going to do.
Tell me about the cooling infrastructure you're going to have to put in here.
Bob.
We're still trying to figure out the design we're going to do in here, but there'll be approximately 8 1,500 ton chillers sitting out in the equipment yard to cool the place.
Were the owners of the mall surprised when they heard that you wanted it?
Well, actually, the city bought them all, and we actually leased the mall from the city. So they were looking for a new user, an office type user to come in, and they were thrilled to have us. And they've been incredibly great guests, hosts of us.
Very cool. Wow. So you're going to put some raised floor in here. You're going to have lots of wiring.
Yeah, the design right now is 4 bays. There'll be 2 bays downstairs and 2 bays upstairs. There'll be mechanical galleries on the outside walls. There'll be a mechanical gallery in the middle there for air conditioning. There'll be raised floor in here. Hallway down this end. Back over in that far corner is where our loading docks are going to be, and so inventory will come in through there. We'll have some storage up in here. There'll be offices back in this area for the personnel in the facility.
If you got access to somebody else's data center like Google's or Microsoft, what would you be looking around at? What would you be trying to learn?
I'm really not allowed to say anything whether or not I've had access or not.
I've been inside Google's data center, so.
So have I, but not officially.
But what would you? But what would you be looking for if you had access to somebody's data center?
Oh, I'd be more interested in I don't really care about that part. I more care about the mechanical side of the house. Actually, there's not a whole lot different. We all are constrained by the same technology out there. Chillers are only so efficient. The National Electrical Code applies to all. You have to use the same size wire. You have to use pretty much the same people's switchgear and stuff like that. So you're pretty much constrained by what everyone else is already making. So there's nothing really, as we call it, my group, the arcane sciences, and that's what it really is, because it hasn't changed in 40 years.
In fact, physics has still constrained you. I think the big difference is not the data center. The data centers are using almost all the same technologies. Even other than variable speed drives on the chillers, the technology hasn't moved very much. What's really different is that in a Google data center, most of the servers would be identical. Yeah. In our data center, they'll almost all be different.
For Google, the model is very much, look, we're going to be uniform, and they're very much driven by what the output of those computers are. Like in our model, the customer's actually dictating what it is they want out of the data center, so we have to build in a lot more flexibility. It's part of the reason why Bob talked about having multiple bays. I mean, our philosophy is not to build capacity for 100 years. Our goal is to build capacity in a reasonable amount of time and have room to grow sanely. I mean, if we learned anything during the crash, build it and they will come is not a successful business strategy.
Also, I think that if you the data centers of Google and a lot of corporate data centers brag about being lights out. That means that there are so few people there they can run with the lights out. Rackspace data centers are more like a factory. Like any factory, you have inventory. Our servers, we have $3 million of server inventory, that feeds the data centers. We have a supply chain of servers that are on the way from Dell and HP and Seagate, of course. And then we have people who take the servers and put the RAM and the hard drives in them, put the software on them, put them in the rack, fix the servers when they break, so that at all time we're dealing with hard drives that are failing, we're dealing with servers that are failing, troubleshooting. So it's much more like a factory. Last month we put online 1,000 servers in our Dallas data center. So that's the difference environment.
So you have a lot more people running around the data. Because I've been in the Google's data center, I saw 3 people, right,
Well,
for 1,000 computers.
Yeah, well, their model for failure is very much, look, I think they said, look, we'll have 1,000 servers, and when 10% of them fail, we'll deal with it, right? When 100 machines are down.
Yeah, in fact, I saw several computers. They just unplug the Ethernet. When the computer fails, they just unplug the Ethernet, and the whole thing reconfigures itself.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think in our model, the customer could do that with us, but typically the customers don't have that kind of computing needs where they say, oh, well, I can just have 100 servers that don't do anything. I mean, that's, if you have 80% margins, you can afford to have equipment laying around not being useful. In our model, it's very much, hey, look, the customer may have redundant sites or whatever, but really they're trying to get every dollar out of the computing power we provide to them.
It allows the customers to run leaner. So we have a guarantee that we're going to fix any server within an hour. So if you can afford redundancy where one server doesn't affect your uptime, then that's obviously what you want to do. But if you can't afford it, that is the 1 hour computer fix, server fix, really means something. And also because we are deploying 1,000 servers a month for our customers, it means that we have spare parts. And if we can't troubleshoot something really quickly, we just put a new server online.
Now, I bet some of your newer customers you're competing against Amazon for the Amazon Web Services. We had an interview on Fast Company with them. Are you feeling competition from them? Or are you changing your business model to respond to that kind of? You don't even buy a rack of servers anymore. You just go to Amazon and sign up for the bandwidth you want, and you put files up there and you hook up your web services to do that.
Well, we wish it was that simple. I think that the difference between, first of all, we definitely have customers who are utilizing Amazon as
we see a very symbiotic relationship. We have a number of customers who use them as an augmentation, right? Who are using S3 or whatever to augment their servers with us. So it's more of a mix as opposed to, oh, you can just completely replace it, right?
Yeah, I think also we have a cloud hosting platform that we call MOSO, and the difference between Amazon talks about delivering primitives or components, so storage components, processor components. If you want to load balance between 2 processor components, good luck to you, right? It's not they're ultimately you need a programmer to actually make the S3 components work. Our hosting cloud is actually usable, deployable today, whether it's running a Microsoft or Linux. So it's a much more usable platform. The trouble is that cloud hosting today, is really on the bleeding edge, and so every single one of the cloud hosting platforms has had hiccups, and
in fact, the day after we visited Amazon, they were down for a couple hours. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the problems end up being on a completely different scale when you have a DNS issue, or they had some sort of authentication issue that took down the whole configuration.
Which actually argues for doing a mixed thing, so you don't have a single point of failure, right? So if your Amazon sites are down, you still have your Rackspace sites.
This is the part that, as people understand the cloud, those clouds are getting very big, and you kind of feel like, oh, well, it's so big, it must be safe. But the reality is, oftentimes the way those things are built up, the cloud itself is at risk, and you don't know that until you have a stumble, and you kind of go, what do we do? We're out of business.
Now, do you have customers who will have just their data center here, or will they have 3 data centers with you, like one in, you have one in where else?
London, Herndon, London, Virginia, Dallas, and San Antonio.
And do you help your customers build an architecture so everything's replicated?
We love it when they do. We love it when they do. Obviously, that
costs a little bit more money than having just a rack here, right?
Yes, I mean, I think that there's probably 10% of companies that are willing to pay the cost and incur the extra complexity of being in multiple sites. As time goes on, when you buy IT as a service from a company like Rackspace, that will become a productized service that we can deliver easier and easier. But today, it's something that people talk a lot about insisting on 100% uptime, but the cost to do it, most people are not willing to incur the difficulty.
It's really 2 or 3 times the cost, isn't it? Because you have to have the same rack here
and not just cost from the server component, huge complexity of how do I make sure it's replicated, how do I test it to make sure it's going to fail. There's a whole lot of moving pieces. I mean, I think this is part of what moved us towards IT hosting as a kind of our shift, is that, look, we picked mail as our first product because you just want mail. You want mail to come out the other side, and we're responsible for doing whatever it takes to make that redundant and available, and that you don't have to you don't have to know how the sausage is made. You just want to buy it, right? And I think that the more we've seen IT, there's a huge list of IT products that I think are going to go this way, where it's, look, stop worrying about whether or not it's load balanced or not. Tell me how much uptime you want, and then we'll find out what the right price is for you, and then we'll architect that out for you. Because frankly, I have no idea how the power structure gets to my house, and I know that it's up, right? And I know that I have some backup options for that. A friend of mine put a generator in last week, so you can do all sorts of stuff. But the point being that that's not what I make my decision on when I'm buying my power. And I think there's a whole bunch of IT you're going to see in the future that's going to be, back in the day we worried about that. Now it's just on, and that's how it's got to be.
Rackspace was born in the .com bubble as a web hosting company, and why did people go to web hosting companies? Is because they wanted to buy IT capabilities as a service. And just like
they didn't have, or they couldn't, it was all moving. It still does move very fast, and keeping those experts engaged and on the front of the ball it's a complicated, messy business.
What size business do you have to be before you come to Rackspace? Can you start with one server, or a couple $100 a month, or do you have like a cap where you want to see customers?
Well, the entry point is around $300 a month for a single server. That's fully managed and backed up. Our customers range from a single server to hundreds and hundreds of servers. And what happens is that customers have multiple needs. The marketing department may need one server. A small division may need to buy mailboxes. Another division may have a high traffic website. And so there are multiple needs within a medium or large size business. There are multiple needs that need to be hosted or can be hosted. And so the entry point's around 300, and there are some customers that are paying us many millions a year.
When I was over at CERN, they have a pretty nice data center over there to deal with the terabytes of data that new machine's going to kick out starting this summer. And they haven't even bought their computers yet because they're waiting for the last minute bfor that machine turns on, because they know that the price slope is always coming down, right? Seagate drives get cheaper and bigger, and Intel and AMD processor. I just met with AMD yesterday.
One of the paradoxes of all that, like price slope, right, is that means that in some cases we've seen virtualization technology licenses that were more expensive than just buying more gear, right, which is sort of a misplacement. But over the long term, the question is it's not just about the processor. It's how do you, when you have one server, managing one server is pretty straightforward. When you start talking about 2 servers, it's harder. 4 servers is significantly more difficult. 1,000 servers, if you don't have a system, you're doomed, right? And I think one of the things that gets lost in people is they sort of think, it's this linear thing. It's no more linear than if you had 1,000 cars, making sure they all got their oil change and all that stuff is not as simple as just keeping your car running. People kind of get entranced in this. I mean, actually, perfect example. I bought a 4 processor dual core thing from Dell for like $1,000. It's 8 processors for $1,000, and it was sort of like, okay, well, at least it's one machine. We can manage one machine really easily in our dev group. But you go, okay, if we if we had 8 of them, how do we make sure that they're all up to date and all that stuff? That complexity is over time what really kills you. I mean,
also for each VM, if you want to have 10 virtual machines on a single server, they still have to be patched, backed up, and maintained. Yeah. And so really, the virtualization technologies, I think a lot of the benefit will be harvested by companies like ours, because dealing with the complexities that the virtual machines throw off really is something that a service provider can do very well. Also, most of the people using virtualization today are using it for greater server utilization of their own servers, not across 20 different customers. Right? That's for the most part where it's being used. The more complicated it gets, the more it drives to people buying things as a service, though.
By the way, I was price slope, how does that affect you guys? Because every month, I bet your computing power goes up or it gets a little cheaper, right? And how does that affect what you're doing as a business? Or
Well, it's why our inventory is just in time. But when we're it's
the same thing that CERN does. You wait
Absolutely.
till the last second to get that machine in here.
Absolutely. But of course, if we because we have customers who are increasing in their needs and decreasing in their needs all simultaneously, it tends to work out. That is, obviously, obsolescence is a big factor in the data center, and it definitely affects us. But it's one of the benefits that our customers come to us for. Our customers don't need to own any of the hardware; they just get the C prompt.
Where are we right now?
We're on the basement of the mall. This was a general shop area that's being demoed for what we call phase 2. In this area, we're starting in phase 1, which we haven't taken you to yet, where we will make our initial load of people in here, and then this will be the next 200,000 square feet that are going to be built out for the rest of the headquarters to move over here tentatively by the end of this year, early of next year, into this facility. And so we're just demoing this facility out right now in preparation it so that we can start the construction down here in June.
This gives you an idea of how much material you're taking out of the
Right.
building, right? And
It's very
recycling.
typical. And so what you'll end up with is 3 piles of material when it's all said and done. You'll end up with a pile that's basically wood materials that can be recycled. That'll go to a shredder and be turned into whatever they want to do with it. There'll be metal and wire in another pile. And there'll actually be a pile of materials that we can't do anything with. They are just, there's no demand for them, there's no way to recycle them. But the object is to minimize that third pile and to maximize the first 2 piles.
And actually, one of the things we did early on is we brought in like Habitat for Humanity and other organizations to say, hey, look, we have fixtures and shelves and plates for the ceiling. If you guys want them and you'll reuse them, take them. So we've actually tried to make sure that everything that can be used by somebody gets used and doesn't just get covered by dirt.
Was there any hazardous materials in the mall that you had to worry about?
Yes.
Like,
There's asbestos, which had to be when this mall was built, asbestos was a common building product, and so we're having to remove it. And you kind of saw way over there was an area that is screened off with special ventilation. You have to be specially garbed to go in there. Actually, have to have special training to go in there, so that they're remediating the mold and the asbestos in that facility. Those black bags over there, which if you want to show that is contaminated material that has to be disposed of in a special landfill.
okay.
Because
One of the things that strikes me every time I'm here is that if you went to a brand new campus that was being built, it would look just like this.
Yeah.
It would be steel, it would be joists, it would be concrete. So every campus starts looking just like this. We just went in reverse. So you're going to recycle the whole building, and it's going to be better than if we'd built it from scratch. I mean, a mall is designed to shorten distances, just to make it easier to get around. I think we'll be the only hosting company with escalators. So that is, there's so much new life that's going to be born out of this awesome place.
And it's probably a lot cheaper than building this kind of headquarters from scratch, right?
Well, I mean, you have to. The problem with building it from scratch is you have to pay for every single square foot. And the beauty of this is, there's a whole bunch of space we're going to get to figure out what to do with that we would have never built. We would have just said, oh, well, if we don't know what it's going to do with it next year, we're not building it, right? And so now we kind of have all this extra space to sort of go, well, we can use it for different things, or we can grow into it, or it gives us a lot more flexibility and is still kind of fiscally responsible.
It'll cost us less than half of what it would have cost to build it from scratch.
And you have lots of growth. Like you said, you don't have to worry about next quarter's, payments, right?
No, that's right. We're able to have 1.2 million square feet of total space. Of that, around 200,000 of it will be data center, and the rest will be 1 million square feet for people. So we can have 5,000 people in this facility.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that's interesting from our design constraint is we have all this space, and the first instinct for everybody is, okay, I want to be as spread out as possible. I want to be away from everybody. And what we found is that kills the buzz and the vibe. And so actually we're going to do a lot of things to constrain people, to keep them close, because that's really where you get the energy. You get the energy by being in this small kind of nucleus, as opposed to, oh, well, I need to go talk to Phil. he's a 10-minute walk that way and Sally's a 10-minute walk that way. That doesn't build the team atmosphere. So we're actually going to do some things to sort of contain the mall until we're ready to really fill the next wing.
Tell me about where we are.
We're in the Mervyn's department store building, which is 80,000 feet, 2 floors. And this was the very last building built in the mall. So we've completely demolished the interiors. And now it looks just like a normal building on the inside.
How long have you been working on this?
We started at the end of last year, basically. And
6 months.
Yeah, and then actually this is another advantage we got out of the mall was that, normally you have a duct system overhead and you'd like to put in raised floor, but you've got this duct system overhead that you could use cheaply. Well, here they didn't, we ripped all that out because it wasn't any good, so we could decide to do it fresh. So this raised floor we're putting in, which again allows us to lower the heating and cooling costs. It gives rackers more control over their environment, and actually you can feel it's awful sturdy.
Yep. And all the wiring goes underneath to allow us to complete flexibility. Yeah.
One thing, we toured Microsoft's new research building, and they actually had it so that everything was tiled, so that if let's say the air conditioning vent in your cube was in the wrong place, they could actually move it very cheaply.
Same here. So basically, rackers will be able to rerun some power and networking. So if you want to reconfigure your team space, you can do that in this system, which is what we wanted. We wanted the flexibility of teams work how they want to work.
We have an IP-based air conditioning system that opens and closes the vents within a specific little area so that you can heat and cool your spot colder or hotter. And the other thing is that when you leave for the day, the vents close down, so you're no longer cooling that area. The other cool thing about raised floor is that you really only want to air condition a space that's about as high as we are, right? Who cares how hot it is up there? Raised floor cools from the bottom, and so you're having to cool less of the air volume. So it's much more efficient.
Less dust too, because the dust stays underneath the floor, doesn't come up. When you come from overhead, the air handler systems just drop dust. So as an employee environment, it should be a cleaner, more under your control and more pleasant experience.
We're still in Mervyn's, right?
We are in Mervyn's. You're looking at our giant skylight behind us, and this floor is going to be our sales and marketing floor. So it's going to be everybody's excited to be moving over here in just a matter of about 6 weeks. So the workmen better get going, huh?
Yeah. Now, we were just talking about why is this such a people-dependent business, right? And I think you had an interesting...
Well, I think, look, we take a very contrarian view of technology, and that is that technology is improved by having people involved. I think there's a lot of software companies that think, oh, if I just engineered the software a little better, no one would be involved. And for some things, that's totally true. You don't call tech support for your light switch, right? You turn it on and off. But as things get more complicated and you have to have more judgment, we think having a person riding shotgun is a better experience. And that's what our customers continually tell us. They like that they can pick up the phone and instantly call in and talk to a person and get it sorted out and moving on. And I think that everybody doesn't agree with that. I think there are a lot of companies who think, if I was just a smarter engineer, we could get people out of the process. And it turns out sometimes people are the process, and that you have to account for that.
Businesses want to buy IT capabilities as a service, and businesses want to be able to just use the service, just make email work, just make your BlackBerry work, just make your website work. That's our mission. That's our job. And so we are going to take over the maintenance that is in the IT budgets today. It's Nicholas Carr estimated that 70% of IT spend is on maintenance. And maintenance is one of those things that can be done at high economies of scale much better than it can be done in the IT shop. In the average IT shop, the IT guys are buying servers one day, buying software the next day, installing software the following day, then they're troubleshooting a problem the next. That is, there's very little specialization. That is, we believe in having economies of specialization. That is, when we're managing 35,000 servers, we can have experts of all kinds on staff 24/7. And to us, IT as a service is not about renting data center space. It's not about renting servers. It's really about making servers into a service, actually making it usable. It's just like what Salesforce.com did to take a piece of software and a piece of the infrastructure that it runs on, and to make it into a usable, ready-to-use mailbox for you. Each user can get going.
It's going to be very hard to hear with the song on.
Yeah.
Gives you an idea. That's a company in change.
It does, absolutely. It's for real.
We're here in the skylight, which is just put in last week, right?
It was. We got this 200-foot crane to lift this 1,000-square-foot skylight into place. Now, light is a big deal because one of the number one objection to moving into the mall was, malls are dark. Malls don't have windows, and so
It's bad for retail merchandise. I mean, like light in a mall will destroy your merchandise. You don't want anything faded by the sun. You want it to be clean, which is, some of our employees we were going to have dark rooms for because, some techs like the absence of light.
I do.
Yeah, exactly. But we also wanted to have places where if you're a light dweller or a day walker, this is a place for you.
And so this is one of our points of pride. We cut a 1,000-square-foot hole in the ceiling and put the skylight in. We're going to have a little, what they call a fueling station, a little cafe right here as well. So
Little Starbucks-like knockoff.
right, exactly.
I met the guy who started a machine over in Europe, the not Nescafe. I forget. So Nespresso. Sorry, the Nespresso, which you just put in a packet of coffee and makes you a coffee right there.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll have.
At Microsoft, we had Starbucks machines with beans in the top, and you just go and. The mood did improve after getting that.
It did. I bet it did. Nothing like a little caffeine charge.
We were talking a little bit about how you convinced, because most people were against you when you first brought this idea into Rackspace. Most of your employees and coworkers,
employees, the board. I mean, it was you really. I mean,
they all hated the idea, right? Did you hate the idea?
I was not a fan of the original idea. I think I asked how many people were stabbed there last month.
That's true. I think that it was very hard for people to envision what this mall could become. It's in a lost part of town. This part of town has been in decline for 15 years. This was the very first suburb of San Antonio, so it's not very old. But it's been in decline, and the Walmart's closed. And
there was some gang activity.
Walmart was here, and it closed. Did you know Walmart's closed? Yeah.
And there was a Builder Square that closed, a Target that closed, an Albertsons that closed. So this area had been in decline for a long time. None of our employees were considering moving to this part of town. But
are any now?
Absolutely. They're over here like droves.
Are you going to do like Facebook and give a stipend for living within a mile or two of the...
We should do that. I think there are going to be lots of people moving over here on their own. The housing is inexpensive. The neighborhoods around, there's some solid neighborhoods nearby. It's actually right on the major arteries that feed San Antonio. We're just 80 miles direct shot up the interstate highway from Austin. And it's really going to be great. I think that
the definition to me of leadership is seeing something that nobody else sees, and then getting everybody else to come along. So I think you're one of those guys, because it's clear that the rest of your team thought you were crazy, right? How did you convince them? And maybe you can add in here too how you convinced them. We did this on the cell phone, but I want to hear it for the HD cam.
Well, I mean, first of all, when we first, I was not the only person on board with it, but when we first came up with the idea, it was from the mayor. The mayor came to our office.
So he was the crazy one.
He was the crazy
Who's the mayor?
Well, we have Mayor Hartberger and Mayor Linhart. That is, we have a little suburb here. That's Mayor Linhart and Hartberger. So Mayor Linhart brought the idea to us, and he said, "Look, we're talking to a big insurance company. How about moving Rackspace there instead?" And there was a silence in the room. I think over time, that is, the mayor really said, he said, "I don't really want your money. I want your people. I want you to populate our town again, make our streets vibrant again, make our houses more valuable again." And over the next 6 months, they really they made it more and more attractive to us, and it became to the point that we said, let's not go to suburbia and build a brand new campus. Let's stay in the heart of the city, and let's.
I want to get to your leadership skills. How did you convince 1,400 people to go along with you who weren't on board? Right?
Well, I guess Dirk could explain this probably better. But the first thing we did at the board's direction was to the board was against it generally, and they said, "Why don't you go hold some focus groups and see what people say?" And the very first focus group moderator that we hired to bring in refused to do subsequent focus groups for us because the crowd was so rowdy. They almost booed him off the stage. People were concerned that they would get stabbed. They were concerned that their cars would get broken into. They thought it was in a part of town that they felt very disrespected by. They thought there would be no light. They thought that it would just be a hellhole. And I think after those focus groups, that's when I and a handful of others went to work to try to address each of those problems.
So what was that mean?
I think Graham's real secret was he was willing to do, house to house fighting, like get down with individual detractors, sort of really work through what is the issue, what's your number one issue. Let's talk about, okay, look, if it's security, what we'll do is we'll put a fence and we can have the mayor put a police substation on our property. How does that make you feel? I mean, they were willing to do that. And so every time somebody would go, well, this is what my objection is, Graham and the team sort of figured out, okay, well, here's how we solve that. Now, if we solve it, are you in? And after a while, the list of things we'd solve got so big that it was sort of like, wow, if we do this, it could really be something, and it could be something that's bigger than us. I mean, it could be bigger than just Rackspace finding a new office space with some cubes. It could really be a home and have a real impact on the city. And I think that's what really sort of was the tipping point, is that we all caught up to where Graham was, a year ago of, hey, this actually could be something. And we can be a part of that. And I think that, Rackspace selects for people who share our values. And I think that idea of this is a greater calling is what really turned the corner for everybody, is that it was more than just another, 100,000 square feet of space. It was something bigger than that. And I think that's what really converted people.
I think also every company has their values, put on the wall. And one of our core values is what we call it is results first, substance over flash. So we are not a company that does things for effect or things for flashiness. We are a frugal company by nature, and we think that that's why we were the first profitable hosting company in our industry. We think that's why today we're one of the most financially successful companies in our industry, and that frugality really matters. We're going to save $100 million on this facility over time. And that makes a huge difference. It allows us to be profitable when others aren't, and allows us to be profitable at lower prices for our customers. We're a very people-heavy business. That is, we're not a business that is centered around servers and data centers. We need those things. We need servers and data centers like a taxi driver needs his taxi cab. But ultimately, to make IT into a service, you need lots of people to make it happen. So the environment that our rackers work in is absolutely vitally important.
Well, it's been a pleasure meeting you guys. I'm thinking about the blog I'm going to write. I looked in the eyes of a real leader, community leader, visionary, and I had a great time. So thanks for the great tour.
Thank you, Robert.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.